Working on this program, I discovered that young adults are uniquely positioned to make a difference. And our next speaker, he's uniquely positioned to tell us why. He is the doctor of philanthropy, a leading voice on next-gen impact. He dedicates his life to spreading the message of giving more, risking more, inspiring more. He's an award-winning professor of New York University, where his research and teaching focus on the philanthropy in policy change. Please give a very warm welcome to the first speaker, Dr. Jason Fransklyn, Executive Director of Boulder Giving. Sorry, I'm
Thank you. So, I have a confession to make. I am a total philanthropy geek. And, yeah, see? Geekdom, right there. But I didn't always used to be a geek. I actually used to be really cool. Okay, maybe not. I actually started as an activist. My first big victory was when I was only 14 years old, and I helped organize over 10,000 students to march on the steps of the Capitol in Oregon. And together with teachers and parents, we stopped major public education budget cuts. And I was completely hooked. I knew that I was going to be a community organizer for the rest of my life. And that was exactly the path I went on until I was 22 and got a phone call from my grandfather's secretary. She said, "Your grandfather has decided to let the younger generations get involved in the Family Foundation. Are you interested?" And I said, "Of course. What Family Foundation?" It was perhaps the worst way you could tell the next generation about the family's history of giving. But when you get that question, you say yes. And what I did not realize at that time was that it would become for me a turning point. I started getting more and more involved in philanthropy. And there's pictures coming, I swear. I joined a group called Resource Generation that organizes other young donors, worked with the Council on Foundations to set up their next-gen task force. And over the next several years, every part of my life started to focus on how to move more money for social change. Today, I spend my days working to inspire people to give as the Executive Director of Boulder Giving. Last year, I finished my PhD looking at philanthropy and policy change. I'm on 3 foundation boards and involved in 3 different giving circles. Like I said, philanthropy geek through and through. So it's no surprise that many of my friends are people I've met through philanthropy. And when Maya asked me if I would share some reflections around next-gen giving, I looked to them for their feedback and advice. What were the commonalities? And I looked at my Facebook friend list and realized that over 200 of my friends are involved in their family foundations. It was a really clear example of why everyone's talking about next-gen giving. Indeed, in 2012, American Express did a research study about millennials and called us the first generation of inherited wealth in a century. And scholars at Boston College estimate that American millennials are going to be inheriting over $40 trillion by 2060. And the question is, how will that make a difference? And are we behaving differently as next-gen donors? Well, I'll tell you, in my experience, the answer is absolutely yes. We display the impatience of youth and a desire for faster change. We are focused on different issue areas than our parents and our grandparents. And we are integrating giving more deeply into our lives than ever before. So we are impatient for change. And consider my friend Karen Piddleman as a perfect example. She took her inheritance and has focused on turning it into change. She launched last year the Trans Justice Funding Project, and in just 24 months has galvanized transgender activists across the United States and has moved a lot of major social justice givers, individuals and foundations to start funding transgender activism, the most under-resourced part of the LGBT community. My friend Brixton Diamond is another great example. He was inspired by the power of documentary filmmaking when he went to his first Sundance Film Festival. but he was equally upset to see so few African American faces when he showed up there. But rather than just bemoan the legacy of racism that has left African Americans excluded from these film spaces, he decided to take action, and he created Black House as a space to celebrate and encourage black filmmakers at Sundance and beyond. When he started in 2007, there were only 7 black films. Just 6 years later, there were almost 30, and it continues to grow. So not only do we see next-gen donors jumping in with big projects right away, we also see that we are focusing on different priorities than our parents and our grandparents. A couple years ago, my friends Sharna Goldsecker from 2164 and Michael Moody from the Johnson Center for Philanthropy did one of the first in-depth studies of next-gen donor priorities. And one of the findings that jumped out at me was the different priorities they found between different generations. They found that while for some issues, education and basic needs in particular, we shared a common purpose. But millennials are more focused on the environment, on civil rights, on advocacy than our parents and grandparents, and less on some of the traditional issues like arts, religion, healthcare, and youth. And this resonated so clearly with my own experience. My parents and grandparents were my inspiration, actively giving and volunteering for as long as I can remember. But while my parents prioritized veteran services and healthcare in their philanthropy, I'm more focused on policy issues like economic justice and LGBT equality. And when I look at my friends and look more broadly at next-gen donors, I see the same thing. There's very few major gifts going to art museums or temples or universities. Instead, I've seen Farhad, who's investing deeply in the state of Kentucky to help move the economy from a pollution-based coal economy to a new sustainable economy instead. I see Jamie Schweizer, who's launched the Beyond Prisons Fund to try to work for an end to mass incarceration. I see my friend Lavani, who's traveling the globe to invest in local economic development projects and create change in the global south. And I see my friend Leah, who showed up at Zuccotti Park at the beginning of the Occupy movement as an organizer and as a funder, supporting the uprisings in New York and around the country for economic justice, to the extent that Salon magazine called her Occupy's heiress. Across all of these examples and across my friends as a whole and the next-gen donors I've worked with around the country and around the world, I see this shift where we often talk about in philanthropy that donors start with charity and move to social change. I see next-gen donors starting with change, less interested in charity to help others than change with others. Lastly, because we're stepping in as major donors very early in our life, we are blurring the boundaries of philanthropy and the other parts of our work. We're mixing giving and socializing in ways that we've never done before. I've started with friends 2 different giving circles, Funding Queerly and the High Impact Documentary Funding Circle. And they're some of the most fun activities in my life. Chances to hang out with friends, catch up on what they're doing, and also give and learn together simultaneously. We also see this in social enterprise, and I think a big part of the rise of social enterprise is the energy of new, younger donors and younger inheritors who are striving for impact as well as financial return. Indeed, I see those with inherited wealth using that privilege of economic freedom to pursue impact instead of just the highest financial return opportunities they could look for. So my friend Brendan left his job on Wall Street and took his inheritance and his earnings to launch The Working World, to help finance new cooperatives being formed across North and South America. Kristen took her experience with her family's financial trading company and her family foundation and has now created the NIA Global Solutions Fund, a new impact investing fund with Domini Social Investments, integrating their giving and their passion for something that can pursue impact. Now, I will say across all of these examples, and when I talk about next-gen donors, what I often hear is just wait. We'll end up cynical soon enough. Well, I have a request for all of you. Please don't wait for us to get cynical. Instead, join us now. I think the energy, the risk-taking, and the flexibility of next-gen donors may be exactly what our society needs. Thank you.